Sholabomi Shashore, the PS Political, Legislative and Civic Engagements Office, Lagos State. And of course, Yemi, EIE, enough is enough. And our dear friend Gabriel Okewo of Budget, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I must say that it's a very special privilege, of course, to have been invited here. And I think the organizers of the Technology, New Media, and Citizens and Governance Conference of 2024 deserve all of our commendation for providing the platform for this very important discussion on technology, the present and future of political action. And I'm deeply honored, I must say again, for your very kind invitation to make these keynote remarks, to open the conversation. The topic is, again, technology, the present and future of political action. Technology, the present and future of political action. The first point I think that one ought to make is to attempt to unpack the meaning and purpose of political action. I think that's important because I think it just bears various colorations. And to do so, I would ask a few rhetorical questions. What is the point of political action? What is the point? What is the role of the elite in political action? Who is the elite? Why is the elite particularly important in political action, especially in developing countries? And then why does technology which otherwise should be a mere tool, why is it important in our discussions on political action? I'll answer that last question immediately, why technology is so important in the discourse on political action. It is because technology is both a tool and a radical expression of a crucial right, the fundamental right to freedom of expression. And there are many who say that that particular right, the right to freedom of expression, is the foundation of all other rights. Of course, that's another argument. The next question I ask is, who is the elite? Who is the elite? Who are these people described as the elite? The elite is usually a small fraction of society, but who wield enormous social, political, and economic power. There are those who have the benefit of education, economic power, or social influence, and the elite include, of course, politicians, religious leaders, business and professional persons, but importantly for this discussion, civil society activists of various shades. Civil society activists. And in this room, we have the Nigerian elite of that particular category, civil society activists, in various shapes and forms. And the reason why they are the elite is because they have access to media. They have academic platforms. They are civil society organizations. And the elite can effectively advocate for reforms. They can mobilize public opinion. They can push for accountability in governance. They dominate thought leadership as educators, as writers, as influencers. They hold, in my view, a disproportionate capacity to shape the political landscape. The context, and I think that it just bears repeating, that the elite, small as they are, very small numbers, have a disproportionate capacity to influence the political landscape of a country. Now, the context of our discussion is, of course, Africa, African countries. And the common denominator of countries on the continent is that they are developing economies with disproportionately large numbers of poor and vulnerable citizens. Most African countries struggle with many of the same problems: economic deprivation, poor governance, weak institutions, and corruption. Now, the purpose of political action, therefore, must be to draw attention to these issues and to seek to change them. Political action refers then, I mean, if you then want a sort of definition of it, it refers to those activities directed at influencing decisions, policies, or governance within a political system. That's just a rough definition. And these activities will include advocacy, and many of us, of course, are familiar with that, activism, protests, demonstrations, policy development, and community organization. But as I have suggested later in this presentation, political action must go beyond influencing outcomes. It must include participation in politics and driving policies. And I'll come to that very shortly. But let us now consider how technology has been leveraged in political action in Africa. And we saw quite a bit of that in the videos and some of the remarks that have been made, and Tuboson's remarks also. But perhaps the most dramatic of the use of technology is the use of social media for protest mobilization. And that, I think, is the most dramatic, especially in the last few years. Platforms like X, Instagram, were used in organizing the NSAS protests in Nigeria, and we saw a bit of that in the video. Activists coordinated rallies, they raised funds, and presented evidence of law enforcement violations, real time, and also raised international awareness using the hashtag NSAS. Much of the same approach, I'm sure we'll see, was used in the End Bad Governance protests in October. More recently, the so-called Gen Z uprising in Kenya, protesting the Finance Bill 2024, saw the use of TikTok and X to spread awareness, plan demonstrations, share information, and then to avoid the police, the protesters used the Zello app, which functions as a real-time walkie-talkie. So they were able to use this app to avoid the police, because this app enabled them to have live updates on police movements, and then they were able to plan accordingly. To educate the public about the finance bill, they developed an AI chatbot to answer questions about the bill and its implications. So technology has also become crucial in so many different aspects, but also something that is an interesting development, especially for those of us who are born a few years, maybe much earlier than some of those who are seated in this room. Technology has become crucial in advocacy and petitioning. Years ago, Amnesty International petitioned governments by getting volunteers from all over the world to write petitions to governments over any issue, usually issues of violation of rights. These letters were only seen, if ever, by government officials. Because if you write a letter, and this is a physical letter, and you post it, only government officials will see it. Today, they use online platforms. This is Amnesty International, to write those letters and petitions. And that, of course, puts more pressure on public officials, because the entire world is made aware of the cases in question. So Amnesty International's Right for Rights is an online campaign, and it was used against the Ethiopian government, for example, to pressure them to release prisoners taken into custody during periods of political unrest. Also, I think we got some reference to that earlier. In 2020, Zambia's youth movement, using mainly WhatsApp groups and Facebook, organized campaigns opposing Constitutional Amendment number 10, commonly known as Bill number 10, on the grounds that it threatened democratic principles. June 22nd of that year, 2020, young Zambian celebrities and activists conducted what they christened a bush protest. Now, this was a protest in some remote part, an undisclosed rural location. So they all gathered in this undisclosed rural location, somewhere in the bush somewhere. But they broadcast their protest live on several social media platforms, highlighting issues of corruption and lack of accountability. So the police couldn't find them. No one could find them. They were in the bush somewhere. But then they were broadcasting these protests, and of course, as you can imagine, insulting the government thoroughly. In Zambia also, the Zim Rights election monitoring app was used to enable voters report election irregularities and other updates in real time. So they were able to use an app. They just developed an app for reporting irregularities and all of that. But this was done in real time, so everyone could follow what was going on. In Uganda also in 2021, during the general election, we saw an example of digital resistance to government shutting down the internet, when activists bypassed restrictions using VPNs to disseminate information about voting irregularities and to share opposition messages. So we've also seen the use of mobile apps for civic education and education of voters about their rights. In Tanzania, for example, a famous one was Mvuli, which was an app specifically designed for voter education. And then in South Africa, a platform was also developed, a youth platform was also developed to encourage political participation and policy discussions and advocacy amongst young people. In Sierra Leone, essentially as long ago as 2018, in order to promote transparency and accountability and to reduce electoral fraud, blockchain technology was tested for the verification of election results. And that was really quite interesting because 2018, blockchain was still relatively new anywhere in the world. But it was tried and tested in order to ensure electoral integrity in Sierra Leone. And years after, I was privileged to lead an election monitoring team in 2023. And we saw exactly how that was used and how that was put in use again. So technology is vital in molding opinions for education and organization. And you know, of course, that social media, blogs, mobile phones, and other digital means of access to information have broken the monopoly of media organizations in the dissemination of ideas and information. All these methods have democratized participation, giving previously voiceless populations a platform to express dissent, to mobilize protests, and demand accountability. This phenomenon is crucial in the unfolding development of mass participation in political change. So all the memes and skits and podcasts and other online content are powerful tools for mass communication, for political commentary, and social mobilization in the digital age. Today, we have several individuals who have social media platforms subscribed to or followed by millions of people. The combined sale of print newspapers in Nigeria is not even 1 million. Print newspapers, all of them together, don't add up to 1 million readers or subscribers. These tools, people's own private platforms and all of that, and private pages, show how technology can be used to galvanize grassroots movement, to challenge entrenched power structures. But social media platforms, as we've heard also, and I think Tubosun referred to that, can be a threat to democracy. They can be a threat to social cohesion and individual and collective security. So social media platforms can themselves be a threat. And most platforms have developed, and if you look at some of the social media platforms that we have, Instagram, X, some of them have developed algorithms that often create the echo chamber effect, as is said, or filter bubbles, as some describe it. Now, these are situations where users are primarily exposed to information that reflects their existing beliefs and opinions. And what this means is that it invariably reinforces their views and prejudices, making them less open to opposing perspectives and increasing divisiveness. So what you find is that if, for instance, you belong to you have a particular point of view, say that you strongly believe that that atheists are terrible people and they should be killed, if that is your belief, you will find a lot of material that supports your view. And as long as you continue to use those materials, these algorithms help to bring those materials to you all the time. So it's the same sort of material that you want to see, that you keep seeing. And what that has shown is that it hardens people's positions because other perspectives are shut out. So even the social media platforms themselves may encourage divisiveness just by the use of those types of algorithms. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, as you know, in 2016, revealed, amongst other shocking things, how using these algorithms in Nigeria here, religious and ethnic divides were manipulated to inflame emotions and further divide people here in Nigeria during the 2015 elections. And if you look back to the massacre, for instance, of close to 1 million people in Rwanda, that was instigated by just radio broadcasts, largely. Radio, this is just audio. Imagine what social media can do today with graphic videos and audios reaching exponentially increased numbers on numerous platforms. If you recall, during the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in South Africa, fake videos of violence and destruction of property elsewhere, these were things taking place in India or somewhere, were passed off as videos of South Africans burning properties and businesses of Nigerians. This resulted, as some of us recall, in spontaneous destruction of South African-owned businesses in Nigeria. In the past 2 years, we've seen some of the more dramatic iterations of technology, especially AI-driven. So it's now possible to generate deep fakes, photos or videos showing individuals making statements that they never made or doing acts that they didn't do. Just, I think it was in March or June of 2022, a deep fake video surfaced which showed the Ukrainian president, President Zelensky, allegedly instructing Ukrainian soldiers to surrender to Russian forces. The video was very quickly debunked, but it raised concerns about the use of deep fakes in disinformation, especially during conflicts. Everyone pays a price for weaponization of technology. Everyone pays. Truth can be rubbished, while falsehoods and hate can be elevated. Almost everything can be put in doubt. So it might be important for responsible users to attempt to design ways of preventing the weaponization of social media, especially since government control will almost invariably defeat the new gains of free speech. And I think also this point was made earlier by the Honorable Commissioner for Innovation, Science and Tech. I think the point was made that if we don't find a way of self-regulating, I think these are the hard duties that civil society must undertake. What are the ways of self-regulation? What are the types of social compacts or compacts that can be developed to self-regulate? Because government regulation almost invariably will mean that free speech will be impugned. Social media enables free speech writ large, as you know. That's what social media does. It is free speech at its largest expression, or in its largest form. The anonymity of identity and the nuance of location, you can locate yourself anywhere, that social media creates is really empowering for all, and it is non-discriminatory. So the weak, the strong, the treacherous, the mischievous, anybody, haters of every kind, have cover to speak their minds, to speak truth to power, to misinform, to insult, to just say anything whatsoever. So I think that it's an important, critical medium, but we must find ways of self-regulation. Now, permit me to make two other general observations about political action in Africa. In developing countries, especially countries with fragile economies and widespread poverty, we do not have the luxury of political action for its own sake. We simply do not have the luxury of political action just for the sake of political action. There is a sense of power and excitement around protests, and of course anyone who has participated in a protest knows that good feeling one gets when one seems to be doing something good and helping your society. But political action must go beyond protest and the euphoria that it brings. It must lead to some measurable or tangible result. Otherwise, it becomes counterproductive. In poor societies, every day of protest is valuable because it means that the millions of informal workers and traders make a huge sacrifice because they earn on a daily basis. So it's important that there is good reason for the sacrifices that are made. So political action must lead somewhere. It must move a step closer to resolving the issues that cripple our societies. The role of the elite in political action is crucial. And when I say the elite in this room, I speak, of course, of civil society. The role is crucial. Usually, it is the elite that have the facilities to craft the objectives of political action or to clearly articulate the grievance and what would amount to success in the particular political action. They have the networks and the resources to build coalitions for political change, often leading to structural reforms, the type of political change that makes a real difference. Now, while a major advantage of technology and in particular social media in mobilizing protesters is that the coordination of action can take place without any apparent leadership. And we've seen that, on social media it's possible to organize without identifying any leadership at all. This might itself be a weakness. Our experience, and I'm sure that that's the experience of many of us, is that where there is no clarity of leadership and objectives, political action, no matter how dramatic and far-reaching, will be futile and may lead in the future to protest fatigue. People may well become tired of protesting if there is no achievable end. Let me also make a related point. In a democratic society where the objective of political action is to make substantive or structural change, this may only be possible within the context of partisan politics. And I'm sure that there are many who may not agree with that. And I just repeat that when you are trying to make substantive change, especially structural change, in a democratic society, it may only be possible within the context of partisan policy. And I explain that. Yes, we can be effective as pressure groups, and some level of change is possible by our advocacy and action. But the truth is that for the depth and scale of change that is required in developing countries, political power is required. The purist stand of the elite, which of course includes many in civil society, that we should not get our hands dirty in politics, will not achieve change at the scale in any important areas of concern. And I'll just repeat that. If we take the position, don't get your hands dirty, don't get into politics, we cannot achieve change at the scale that is required, especially in our societies. The important areas of concern, of course, are possible. We can influence those areas if we participate actively. We must participate, even if it means taking a partisan stand. We must be involved somehow or the other. We complain, for instance, about political parties lacking ideology and political campaigns lacking policy substance. Who will change these dynamics? Surely it will be men and women like you and I, not spirits. It will be men and women. You and I are the ones who can change the direction of political parties. Those who establish political parties are men and women like you and I. If we want to change the way they sound, if we want to change the way they develop, whether the tone of debate, then we must participate. For many years, and I'll just share a very quick personal experience, some quick personal experiences. For many years, I believed that it was possible to transform our Ministry of Justice to be more, and I speak of the Ministry of Justice here in Lagos State. I believed for many years that it was possible to transform the ministry to be more citizens-oriented and also to reform our administration of justice system. I strongly held that belief for many, many years. Teaching in the University of Lagos at the time, from 1981, this was one of the key issues. I talked all the time, wrote extensively about reform of the administration of justice system. I was part of several civil society organizations committed to these causes. We drew up various policies and blueprints. We made some progress, but it was not until the AD then won elections in Lagos State in 1999. The AD, of course, as you know, became AC, then ACN, and then APC eventually. But when it was when the AD won elections here in Lagos in 1999, and I got a chance to be the Attorney General of the state, that working in partnership with the bar, the bench, and civil society, we were able to carry out some of the more far-reaching reforms of both the Ministry of Justice and the administration of justice system here in Lagos State. My experience in civil society was extremely useful. I and my organization, I had an organization then, which still exists now, called Integrity, it's now called the Convention of Business Integrity, had been Ford Foundation and MacArthur Foundation grantees. I was a Ford Foundation grantee as long ago as I believe 1993, and then later on, the organization Integrity, which I co-founded with Mr. Pampa, also became Ford and MacArthur grantees. Now, when I got into office as Attorney General, they immediately asked how they could help. And it was these two organizations that funded the early years of reform efforts in Lagos State, in our justice sector reform efforts, before budget funds kicked in. For almost 18 months, the funding that we had for the reform of our Ministry of Justice and the administration of justice system came from our grantors, mainly Ford and MacArthur. So we were able to introduce in the Ministry of Justice then a new department to the traditional departments. In most ministries of justice, you have public prosecutor's office, you have civil litigations, etc. We introduced the Department of Citizens' Rights, the Citizens' Rights Department. Under that department were the Office of the Public Defender. Now, the Office of the Public Defender provided free legal assistance to people who couldn't afford legal services in both civil and criminal cases. Before then, the federal government had a legal aid council, but that legal aid council was only for criminal cases. So in Lagos State, we pioneered the provision of legal services for civil cases as well. So if you couldn't afford the fees for whatever civil cause it was, whether it was a land matter, whatever it was, Lagos State government at the time, through the Office of the Public Defender, was able to provide those services. And then also we established something called the Citizens Mediation Centers. All of these, of course, still exist today, and they are much bigger than when they were founded. And in the Citizens Mediation Centers, citizens could have small claim disputes resolved free of charge. So we had a lot of landlord and tenant cases. The magistrate courts at the time were doing about 2,000 cases a year. Once the Citizens Mediation Center started, they were able to do almost 8,000 cases, landlord and tenant cases in a year, almost 4 times what the magistrate courts were doing. And this, of course, were free for citizens. We also had a consumer protection unit. We were able to reform our civil and criminal procedures, appointments and discipline, and remuneration of judicial staff. And we were able to influence policy, especially around the appointment of female judges. 2/3 of our judges that were appointed then are female. Until today, I believe that at least half of judges in Lagos State are female. Also, I always believed, and this is fast forward to 2014, 2015, I always believed that this country could effectively provide a social safety net for the poor and the vulnerable. And again, I worked with so many people, so many organizations around, so many of the ideas, social security, etc. But the opportunity only came in 2015. Before the campaigns in 2015, when I had no idea, of course, that I'll be nominated as vice presidential candidate, Patutomi, and so some of us will know Patutomi, Wale Edun, who is the current current Minister for Finance and Coordination of the Economy, and later Mr. Tunde Erukera, who was the FCPC chair. All 3 of us, Wale, Patutomi, and I, and Mr. Erukera later on, wrote the social investment policy into the APC manifesto. Of course, none of us knew that we were going to play any role in actual elective politics at the time. And that policy included the homegrown school feeding program, the conditional cash transfer program, the government enterprise and empowerment program, and the Empower program. Now, because I got a chance to serve in government This program saw the light of day. Now, all three of us, I was the primary person who got appointed, who got elected into government. Assuming that this never happened, assuming that none of us ever got a chance in government, I doubt whether we would have been able to do anything whatsoever about the social investment policy, or that any of this will see the light of day. I had the privilege of chairing the implementation of our social investment program between 2016 and 2019 as vice president. And as of 2019, we were feeding 9.6 million children daily in 30 states at the time, and we're looking at going beyond that to 12 million. As I said, this was between 2016 and 2019. We were able to put several farmers to work, cooks to work. We had 500,000 graduates and non-graduates in the Empower scheme. We granted microcredit to 2.4 million informal traders. If I or Pat or Wale remained outside the partisan political space, I don't think these modest achievements would even have been possible. A second point that I'd like to make is that political action today must go beyond protest. We must see activities that directly catalyze development as important features of political action. And I want to emphasize that protests, of course, are crucial, they're important, but we must use our resources also for direct action that has development objectives. We can instigate official action in various ways. For example, intervening in important areas of human capital development, such as education or healthcare. So we identify a problem, out of school children, and we recognize that brick and mortar cannot cope with the number of children who are out of school today and who require basic education. In other words, we can't build enough schools. We're growing at 6 million people every single year, the size of Liberia every year, So we need to deal with this. Technology makes it possible for us to engage in mass education. The question is, how can technology deliver cutting-edge, affordable basic education? What is the role of AI in mass education? And there are several private tech-enabled initiatives that are focused on these challenges, disrupting long-held beliefs on education and how education should be delivered, and challenging public education authorities to adopt more dynamic, more relevant curricula. For example, there's a program called M-Shule in Kenya. It's an AI-powered mobile learning platform that delivers personalized education via SMS to primary school students in underserved areas. So they use their mobile phones at a time. And I remember when we started the social investment policy, people said, people in the rural areas, they don't have phones, they don't have this and that. But the vast majority of places we went, people had their phones, people had phones. And even where they didn't have phones, we were able to make phones available because there are so many cheap versions of these phones. So it is entirely possible to deliver education using mobile telephony and using many other different platforms. Today you have AI-driven STEM tools, such as AI-powered labs and simulations, allowing students to experiment with complex scientific concepts without expensive equipment. Basic education today, in my own view, must involve critical thinking and collaboration. Nobody is doing competition anymore. And for those who are in the tech space, you understand collaboration. And we must teach collaboration. We must deliberately teach collaboration as we teach critical thinking. Why? And one of the reasons why community action for development or even political expression is lacking is because of an educational curriculum that overemphasizes individual excellence and competition over collaboration and group or communal success. One of the reasons why we find it so difficult to work together to change our communities is because individual success is overemphasized. Competition, especially in the academic space, is overemphasized. Political action is weakened when people see individual success as more important than community or group success. Collaboration as a key in tech, in any type of technology, especially technology enabled businesses or basic education can really be a game changer. We can produce young men and women who understand the power and exponential benefits of united action. Collaborative AI for learning was developed by mid-schooler at the MIT. They developed this particular AI-enabled platform, which integrates different AI tools into classrooms to support collaborative group learning. Students interact with AI-powered conversational agents during group and work discussions, enhancing their collaborative skills. Education of girls is considered in our country, for example, is a key issue, is a major problem that needs to be dealt with, and is a key objective of many of our educational policies. But then the question is, how effectively are we delivering? But there are tools for speedily achieving great results. There's a program called Teach Flow, which utilizes AI to promote gender equality in education by developing programs that address the unique challenges that are faced by girls, the education of girls, especially girls in rural and underserved areas. Their AI-driven platforms offer personalized learning experiences and resources tailored to the needs of female students, especially in environments where female students are restricted, or where young girls are restricted from interacting with other people. And of course, that helps to bridge that whole gender gap in education. And I'm sure that some of us are familiar with what UNICEF has developed, the digital platforms that UNICEF has developed. These are open source platforms that leverage AI to advance girls' education in particular and promote gender equality. These initiatives focus on providing inclusive and transformative digital technology to enhance girls' learning and skills development for work and life. So by utilizing AI, they have made education more accessible and engaging for girls in underserved regions. So let me conclude by saying that technology has revolutionized political action by amplifying voices, mobilizing movements, and fostering transparency. However, we know the potential risks, disinformation, divisiveness, and these potential risks must be addressed responsibly. Political action should go beyond protests to achieve measurable reforms, with the elite playing a crucial role in shaping and sustaining change. Additionally, leveraging technology for developmental solutions in education, in healthcare, and governance can drive lasting progress. And I think that by using technology responsibly and innovatively, we can empower individuals, we can strengthen institutions, we can transform political action into a force for real development in Africa. And I'm sure that the conversations that we're going to have today are critical steps towards realizing this vision. And I hope that we all will be able to bring our own particular perspectives to some of these very important conversations that we'll be having today. So thank you all very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Please wait on stage, sir. Please wait on stage. We want to take some pictures. So I'd like to have the Honorable Commissioner of Innovation, Science, and Technology please join the former Vice President. We have a set of pictures to take, and we'll have some more of our dignitaries joining on stage. And also joining him is the Permanent Secretary, Office of Political, Legislative, and Civic Education, Shola Shashore. I'd also like to welcome a gentleman who's joining us all the way from the Republic of South Africa, the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Transformation Technologies of